Welcome to the next episode of Triggers in Spiritual Medicine. I am your host, Laura Bonetzky-Joseph. This podcast is all about engaging in some real talk. We address the elephant in the room to our growing sickness in our society, address root issues, and provide sustainable solutions. We hope by addressing the intersectionality and connect the dots like a web of many of society's challenges, we can help others understand the trauma infection that impacts all areas of our life. This can include addiction, domestic violence, systemic racism, homelessness, systemic oppression, abuse, chronic health issues, our environment, climate change, all these things. This is a collaborative podcast, so we hope to share a new perspective, solutions, healing, and resolutions. This includes that each episode we address a certain trigger while offering the spiritual medicine with at least 3 tips or actionable steps that you, the listeners, or the watchers can take and implement today. For that reason, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or making a donation to help support and further our social justice initiatives. All the links to all these things will be listed into the description. And today, I don't know how many people really know about breast implant illness. I know it took a lot of advocacy and work, especially with survivors who have breast cancer, especially now we're seeing a significantly growing demographic of breast cancer under the age of 35. I think every person I've worked with in the past 5 years that has had breast cancer has 100% been under age 35. And breast implants has now become part of the reconstruction process. So this is an interesting topic of addressing breast implant illness. And please welcome Ellie. Ellie, please share about you, share about how you got into this.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so super thrilled to be here. So I was 18 years old when I received my implants as a gift for graduation. And in California, that was where I grew up. No one batted an eye. That was just a thing to do. If you didn't have big boobs, you went and got them. And we didn't think anything of it. It was just what you did. And I went through 3 different, I had 3 kids. I was now 17 years past my implant surgery, and I was exhausted all the time. I had chronic fatigue. I was having all of these symptoms that I couldn't put anywhere. I couldn't diagnose them. I couldn't find an answer to them. And that was when I was exposed to breast implant illness. That was when I learned about that. And all of the light bulbs went off. It validated me in all of these ways of like, that makes so much sense now. I'm not a crazy person. And that for me was my aha moment of like, okay, these are making me sick and I need to do something about it.
Yeah, and can we just talk about, you were 18, and as a culture, we tell women that everybody should have breast implants because who you are isn't good enough. Can we just start even with that conversation? Because it's like, because I guarantee you there's going to be somebody that's 15, 16, 17 years old that is feeling the pressure about body dysmorphia and feeling the need to say, I need breast implants because maybe I don't have any, or maybe mine aren't as perky enough, like whatever the reason, or my boyfriend says that whatever, because that's a culture issue, right? This is what we tell women, right?
Oh, absolutely. The industry tells us that you're not good enough, right? Your nose is too big, your eyebrows are too fluffy, and then your boobs are too small. And there is a solution for all of that, and it is going under the knife, right? We're going to do Botox to fix your face. We're going to give you a nose job. We're going to give you a boob job. We're going to lift, tuck, stick stuff in you to create this quote unquote ideal. And what's happening is everyone is becoming the same thing. Everyone is starting to look identical, and we're losing our individuality and we're losing our own personal identities into this beauty ideal that's being spoken at us. It's not coming from us.
And
It's
can we just even amplify that by saying, who created this medical model to basically profit off of cutting up and, cutting up women's bodies, right? I mean, let's just go back historically. It comes from a patriarchal colonizer, male supremacy like construct. And even women, us as women, we have fallen into that to feel like we need to be worthy or equal to a man by living up to those standards. So it's a medical model, because I have friends of mine now that have opened my eyes to this, about even the medical models and even healthcare in general, on how we pathologize women's bodies, we pathologize women's traumas, we medicalize it, and we ignore the other pieces because it's driven from a model where all the experts were men who cut up women's bodies.
yes, yes, it's dare I say, it's suppression in its own right, right?
Right.
Because if you cannot be good enough as you are, then you will always be weaker. You will never be strong. You will never be true and fully you and fully authentic, because you're constantly searching and seeking out a solution for a problem that doesn't exist, right? It's a problem that doesn't exist. Women are all shapes and sizes, and let's flip that. Men are all shapes and sizes too, but they're not the ones going under the knife. Not Yes, I know that there are some that do, but it is not the majority, right? They are
Right.
not being told that they need to enhance themselves in a certain way. And so it is like you're saying, it's very much like another way to oppress women and make them feel less than and make them feel inferior, to this ideal that we're looking for. And I fell hook, line, and sinker for that.
Yeah.
That was, the magazines that I looked at and the shows that I watched, and even just
And
what my parents believed and knew, and like it was multi-generational believing too.
it's cultural conditioning, right? It's conditioning, patriarchal conditioning at its finest, right? It's the constant advertising to the brain saying, well, you're not worthy if you don't have breast implants, right? And so, I mean, yeah, I mean, there were times I'm like, I remember when I had my first daughter, my breast swelled up so big that I was like, oh, so this is what it would look like if I had breast implants, and I was like, damn, but these are heavy. Because I'm like, now I see why women who have natural breasts that are that big, like why they get breast reductions, right? So it
Right.
goes like these back and forth things, right? And I go, but I remember saying to myself, so this is what I would look like if I had breast implants. Maybe I should. Should I? Should I not? Like, and it's all based on a construct, not of, I mean, we think it's what we think, right? But where do
Right.
those beliefs come from? They come from because of what the culture has fed us of what we think it should be,
Yeah.
if that made
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely. No, for sure. And then you see, our generation's role models when we look at celebrities, and the the men are allowed to age gracefully and get gray hair and get wrinkles, but the women are ostracized and scorned and mocked for letting themselves go if they get a wrinkle or if they have a gray hair. And so there's this imbalance in what we're seeing, right? We're
Yeah.
seeing men age well and age nicely with no scorn, and then we see women that have to nip, tuck, enhance, to stay youthful and to stay beautiful in this way. Um, and then, of course, we do have the celebrities that we follow that are nip tucking, sucking, enhancing, doing all the things, and drastically changing the way that they look. And what that teaches us, whether they say it out loud or not, is it teaches us that we're not good enough with just how we are, what we look like. And
Yeah.
it is its own epidemic of self-loathing that is created. created
Yeah,
from that.
and I would, if I may, just add before we go into how the breasts made you sick and what you were experiencing is
Yeah.
for those who are interested more on kind of like that patriarchal conditioning, we did do an episode, I believe it's episode 5, that I would highly recommend folks to listen to. It was really eye-opening even for me. And it was on the burning times of witches, on how women, and this was more on like how women basically have been conditioned, right? To was it burning times of women? Burning times of witches, of how women basically oh, I'm blanking on the title, but I'll put it in the description. But it's basically how women fight even or compete against each other and all these different things of how we've fallen 500 years later, and we think we're at a place, but we're not. And I think the younger generation is actually getting it, considering the political climate with the erasure of women's rights in this country. So it's like, so I would just say, like, check out that podcast. I might just tag it in here, but definitely check that out because that will really kind of talk about the underbelly. But I wanted just to say, like, how did you know to even check in with yourself to even correlate? Because I'm sure there's women that are going through things that have breast implants and like, oh, well, yeah, it's
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense. That's not making me sick. That's not causing fatigue. That's not. So what was the triggering moment that said, you know what? That's actually what's making me sick.
That is a really good question. And what happened for me is I had finished having children. So my youngest was 2, and I was like, I need to lose all of this baby weight, right? Another cultural conditioning that we can talk about another time. But I got into the best shape I had ever been. Like I lost the weight. I was feeling really good. I was exercising, and I hit a wall, right? So I had this like burst of energy from losing the weight and like starting to exercise and all of that. And then I hit this wall where I'm like, where is this runner's high that they promise? Where is this extra energy when I was in the best shape of my life and I was still sleeping all day and I still could not engage with my kids. And I really just struggled to get enough energy to take them to school and pick them up. And then the rest of the time I was napping. I was so exhausted. And so that was really for me when it was like, okay, I'm eating right. Um, I'm eating organic. I have detoxed. I'm using vinegar for cleaning supplies, right? I took all of these toxins out of my life as well. Because I also thought for a long time that it was the cleaning supplies making me sick, which I do believe that was part of it. But I would clean and then I would get really sick. And I learned that a lot of our cleaning supplies are very highly toxic. And so I was responding very aggressively, which I now know is another side effect of breast implant illness, is these hypersensitivities to scents and to chemicals and to fragrances. And it can trigger migraines and it can trigger, these really highly sensitive smells.
How did you know it wasn't? Because I'm sure there's going to be somebody thinking, oh, it's probably just postpartum depression.
Yes. That is actually the trick, is that it is very hard to know. It is very hard to know the difference. And I think that's really where you have to just listen to your body. You have to listen, and you really have to take out all of the external voices and all of the things that you think it should be and that you maybe don't want it to be, and that you really just have to stop and listen and ask, and your body will answer. Your body will tell you. And I was getting all of these signs, right? I was getting headaches. I was sleeping all the time. I was blaming it on my children. I was blaming it on motherhood. I was blaming it on lack of sleep with the infant times, right? And then I
Which is
had
a
gotten,
very easy thing to do, right? Because it's saying, oh,
yeah,
but Ellie, you're a new mother. Like, I
yes,
mean, it's this happens, right? I mean, kids
right.
are gonna be battery drains. They're gonna be exhausting because that's what happens.
Mhm.
Get over
Yeah,
it, right? I mean,
yeah.
get over it. Just,
Yes, exactly. That's what you're expected to do, and you just power through. And I'm not saying that if you're a mom and you don't have implants and you're exhausted all the time, like that is normal. But there was a point for me where it was like my children were all sleeping through the night. right? And I was sleeping through the night. And then I would wake up, I could be awake for about an hour, and then I would have to go take a nap. And so for me, it was listening to those signs and seeing those things of like, okay, I can no longer say that this is my children. I can no longer say that this is, postpartum. I was tested. I tested for my thyroid. I tested my adrenal glands, my hormones. Like I did all the testing. And that was like my tests were all coming back normal. And so, when your tests are normal, but you don't feel good, right? There's still something else going on.
That's the
And that's,
key, right? I mean, it's like, yeah, you go get tested. Like I tell my clients, like, oh, I want you to go see your doctor and get X, Y, and Z checked. Not to say that there's something wrong, but let them rule that out so we can work here, right? I mean, so sometimes you need that just to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I highly suggest that too, because there are other reasons that can cause chronic fatigue, right? You can have adrenal fatigue, you can have hormone imbalances, your thyroid could be acting up. But when those things are all, once they've been taken into consideration and they are all normal, like you do need to start looking at the other things. And I just became very aware that the toxic load that my body was carrying wasn't any longer external. It was now an internal toxic load that was my implants.
And do you remember that at all? Do you remember that aha moment where you go, yeah, no, it's this?
I think for me, my aha moment, I joined the breast implant illness group on Facebook. And when I started reading what other women were going through, because I felt so alone, I felt so isolated. I felt like the only person in the world that had ever experienced this and that no one would understand me. And so when I started reading all these other women's stories and I could sympathize with them and be like, yes, that's me. Like, oh, you sleep all the time too. And like, it really, really validated all of those symptoms for me. And that was where it just really solidified for me, my answer of like, yes, these are absolutely, the problem here. And we've got to get this taken care of.
So what was your process after realizing that what you thought was going to be a nice, happy, physical uplift ended up being the very thing that's actually making you sick? What happened after that?
Well, I think the very first thing was fear of, if I get these out, what am I going to look like? What is my husband going to think? How am I going to be viewed by other people, right? Like that was my very first gut reaction because, I got them because I was insecure in my body. Having implants did not make me more secure in my body. Like my insecurities were all still there. And so
I think we need to reemphasize that, by the way. Yeah. Reemphasize that for the young ones that might be listening.
Absolutely. Right. Like it's like putting a Band-Aid on, on a massive cut. Like you don't fix the problem of insecurity by adding breasts. It doesn't work that way. So I talked to my husband and he was incredibly supportive and was just like, yes, absolutely. Like, I want you to be healthy. I want you to be well. I don't care what your body looks like. Like, I love you no matter what. And then I had to start doing some mental work. I really, really dug into my practices. I did a lot of guided meditations to help me just at the very first, just learn to be grateful for my breasts because they had been through a lot. Right. And I don't think at any point in my life had I ever actually just expressed gratitude for them, for what they had done. They had gone through this big, massive surgery before I had children. And then they still managed to create milk. They still managed to feed my children. They had gone through all of this stuff. And so I did these practices where I just learned to be grateful because I couldn't look in the mirror and say, gosh, I love my boobs. Right? I couldn't do that at first because I didn't. And
I think it's very important because we have been, again, we talk about body dysmorphia. And I know just even working with women in my practice for almost 20 years, a lot of times when we do some of that work you're talking about, they struggle with it because, and again, it's because of what society says, like you shouldn't like yourself, even though we tell women that they should. But really and truly, we're a culture that says you shouldn't, because if you do, then you're a bitch or you're an egomaniac, right? All these things, right? Or you're a troublemaker. But it's like, wait a minute, yeah, like even, I mean, whether it's your breasts or your vagina, like these are things that have been culturally we've monetized, but culturally, when we go back ancient times, they were sacred.
Yeah.
They this
Mm.
is sacred. This is what brought life. It feeds. It's what, I mean, like there's so much we could say just even about that. I mean, that must have been an
Mhm.
incredible eye-opening journey to explore that kind of like dichotomy, right?
Yeah. I I started talking to them as if they were alive, which I fully believe that they are, right? And that they hear you and that they understand. And so I did. I just spoke to them as if they were their own entities. And I was like,
I,
okay, thank you.
I do that
What?
with my clients all the time. When
Yes,
we talk body organs, I said, make sure it's like this little cartoon character and they have a face and they have a
yes.
mouth and they're talking about, and they're like, what? And I go, but when they do it and they do like kind of like what you're talking about, they go, oh, wow. Like, oh,
Yeah. It,
yes.
it's amazing. It is such an amazing practice because your body is alive. Every single cell has memory and has its own expression, and you can speak to every single part of your body in that exact way. And so, if someone's listening and they're like, "Well, I don't have breast implants." Well, can you look at yourself in the mirror and say that you absolutely love the way your stomach looks or your thighs or your butt? And so if you want to change the way you see your body, you have to start with gratitude, because you can't start with the affirmation of I've got a hot rockin' bod if you don't believe it. It's not going to work. But you can say like, wow, thank you legs for carrying me every single day so far of my life. Like, thank you for helping me walk. Thank you for helping me sit and stand and move and go up and down stairs. Um
It's those
and
little
so
things that we have been so
yeah,
disconnected from, but yet make such a big impact.
yeah. So I started there with gratitude, getting my mind to a state where I didn't feel disgusted by my chest. And then, and I worked on meditations to prep me for surgery, because I knew that surgery was going to be a big deal. And now, now I have 3 kids. Surgery isn't just, oh, I'm 18 and I have no cares in the world. Like, surgery
Right.
is a big deal. And, I had to prepare mentally for that, so that I didn't go into surgery with anxiety um, and stress. And then I did stay very much as clean eating and clean environment as I possibly could to keep that, toxin load low. Um, and what's amazing is I got to the point where the night before surgery, I was able to stand in the mirror, look at my breasts for what they were, right? They were big, they were saggy, I'd had kids, so implants don't stay perky if you have kids beyond, they sag too. And I really could look at them with so much gratitude and thankfulness, and they said goodbye. Um, and then when I looked at my new breasts after surgery, and they're scarred up and I've got drains and all of the things that you have to have after surgery, I remember just feeling so thankful and so happy to be me. Like,
Mm.
I was me. I was finally just this really authentic, true, full version of me without any facade.
Can we
And that
just
was,
like, can we just amplify though to the prep work you did mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically also contributed to how you felt afterwards?
oh,
Because
absolutely.
I think
Yes.
not everybody ties that connection. And it absolutely, when I do pre-op, post-op work with my clients, I
Hmm.
tell them that you're setting yourself up for how you're going to be healing. Everything
Yes.
from pain meds to everything, like your need. So the prep work is absolutely on this level
Right.
so needed. So what you did was so beautiful, where you're able, because of the prep work, you were able to see something that you couldn't see before.
Right. right. And I remember being 18. I remember getting ready to have my implants put in, and I remember that feeling of like, bye bye, little boobies. Like, I hate you. You're not good enough, right? And I'm going to fix you. And because I had never learned to appreciate them for what they were. Like, I really didn't, like, I was young. Didn't really have a chance. And so coming back into my own body, it honestly released a lot of, I guess I would call them walls that I had put up, because going from being flat chested to very full chested got me a lot of really unwanted attention.
Mm.
And I would like to say that I got boobs for myself to make me feel confident, but I mean, we do it to present ourselves to the world in a certain way. And I started getting really untoward sexual advances and comments and looks and touches that I wasn't really expecting and didn't want. So in all of those 17 years, I had actually put up a bunch of walls. I had hidden myself. I would hide my chest. I would dress so that you couldn't see that I had large breasts. I was hiding them. And so it was like all of this lifted from me because I didn't have to do that anymore. And it was beautiful. It was this beautiful release to just be me. And
not realizing that those breasts were like, again, we go back to cultural, right? Like, because we go into it thinking, yes, I'm going to go do this because it's going to make me feel good. And then really and truly, we find out it's really to make men happy. And then they sexualize us. And it's like, that's not what I did this for, right? And it's like, wow, yeah. And then it's about talk about reclaiming your power, right? All the
right,
way.
absolutely. And I think definitely, to be clear, it was like mistreatment of the sexual, because there's nothing wrong with being sexy and love,
Right.
and feeling sexy, but there is that mistreatment of it when you get that unwanted advances and unwanted treatment when you're just really feeling yourself. And so yeah, that was I think a big uh, yes, step into my true authentic self, really being able to be like, oh, okay, yeah, this is who I am as a woman. This is me. And then it did start another journey of like, okay, now I have to love myself in this body and exactly how this is. And what do I do when my stomach sticks out farther than my boobs, right? Like, how do I love myself in that instance, right? And so it just has created, again, like the mental work, the emotional work, and then breaking that that systemic cultural conditioning, right? You
Yeah.
have to
I
break
mean,
through
that's
it.
kind of where we're at. And like the youth today, I think a lot of the youth today kind of get it. They want to be those barrier breakers. And some of us that are old enough, and some people don't think I'm old enough, but I am. I can call myself a grandmother, but it's, we're old enough to see the progression of where we've been the past 40, 50 years. And even the way we treat women. And this is just one aspect, because I'd be curious, did any of your doctors even question this? Or is this something you had to do on your own?
Yes, this was something I really did have to do on my own. And once I did like claim it as breast implant illness, right? Once I made that decision for myself that this was what it was, when I was looking for a surgeon to remove them, I had many people that were just, oh yeah, we just pop them and pull them out. And I was like, oh no, that sounds awful. Like, why would you do that? But that was because that's the traditional way that you remove an implant. So trying to find someone that could advocate for me or that actually believed me, that was difficult. So, finding the resources of doctors that do explant surgery in the form of that they know that it makes you sick, so they remove them correctly. That was
Because I
its
think, because I
own
think that's,
journey.
yeah, because that's like, I mean, I know from working in healthcare, right? We have a huge problem in healthcare today where folks go in and they say, especially women, and they say, this is making me sick. and they
Yeah.
basically say, you need to go see a shrink. You need to go
Yeah.
see a psychotherapist. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with you. I
Mhm.
mean, I know I was treated that way with post-COVID issues.
Yeah.
And even with all my expertise and working in a medical office, and I was dumbfounded at the
Mhm.
mistreatment and just like I had my neurologist, I had a side effect with the MRI dye, and he sat there and told me that that's not possible, even though I had two other doctors confirm it. And he wouldn't
Right.
even, when I called in an emergency with the side effect I was having, he didn't even get back to me for 4 days. And I
Yeah.
had to go see other doctors, and they go, yes, that you can't have this MRI dye, blah, blah, blah. He goes, well, it's your anxiety. You need to go see a shrink for that. That's not the MRI dye. I'm like,
Oh,
so
Laura, don't get me started.
but I mean, this is something because if people are
Yeah.
looking, right, I think one of the things they have to know is you're bringing
Mhm.
up a very valuable thing as far as knowing you have it, but having a doctor that's listening to you, that's saying, yes, I believe you, and yes, we're going to do this safely is a whole nother ballgame.
Right. Absolutely. And I do know a handful of naturopathic doctors who are very open and they listen and and they are very involved in wanting to address, what is going on. And I've spoken to them about my stuff and they're fascinated by it and, and will listen. I think that you do have to be willing to advocate for yourself. You have to be willing to stand up to the medical machine that is what our healthcare is.
Yep.
um, there is
Well, it goes into the medical discrimination that we talk about that's in healthcare to begin with women. This is why we
right,
don't get the level of care that men do. That I mean, this is like all these intertwining things, right? When we're talking about this topic, right? Remember, like the intersectionality, because it goes
right,
into, well, we treat women differently in general in healthcare because that is how it's built upon.
yeah. Well, and I think it's very important to be willing to take some of that into your own hands, right? Like I remember being really young and it was, if you have a fever, you take a Tylenol. If you have a fever, you go to the doctor. And there was so much going to someone else, going to someone else, going to someone else. And I think that too, we can go right back to when they started criminalizing midwifery,
Yeah.
right? We lost so much knowledge on just general care for our bodies that we can do ourselves, right? Through natural sources, through herbs and homeopathy and things like that. We've lost the ability to recognize that those are well and good and work great. And so I'm a very big advocate in being able to do so much of this on your own at home.
Yeah.
Like learn how to care for your children at home, so you don't have to take them into the medical world at first. Obviously, if there's a big thing, if you've got a break or an accident or big issues, I'm all like absolutely get them
Yeah.
care. But for the little things, learn how to take some of that into your own hands because it gives you that ability to say no, thank you to a
Yeah.
doctor that might be pushing something on you. It gives you that inner
It gives you
knowing. It gives
power
you that
too.
strength. Yes,
It gives you that
absolutely.
power back. I think it's something we
Yeah.
talked about earlier before we hopped on, and it was we are programmed to not listen to our body and to find
Mhm.
solutions outside of us when
Right.
especially women are naturally in tuned. And women are
Mhm.
naturally attuned even to the elements around them. So to say, and we've been conditioned, well, no, that's not true. Like we've been gaslit for like 100 years to say, like probably more than 100 years. Well,
Yeah.
no, that's a figment of your imagination. We're gonna put you, you're hysterical. So we're gonna lock you up
Yeah.
in an insane asylum. So it's like
Yep.
it's the same thing, but we're relearning how to, we always say mother's instinct, right? It's like we
Right.
all got it. It's just how do we listen to that? Because that's our truth serum, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a really interesting thing to be able to take that into your own hands, and it gives you a little bit of that backbone. It gives you a little bit of that spine that just lets you know, like, okay, this is for me. I learned to stand up for my children before I learned how to stand up for myself.
Mm.
And so once that mama bear came through for my kids, I was like, oh, okay, look at me stand up for my kids so good. Look at me, say no when it comes to my children. Why can't I do that for myself? And so it was another learn, like I had to teach myself how to stand up for myself. And that included, talking to these doctors or walking out of an office. I walked out of a consultation and I said, you are not the doctor for me. Thank you. Goodbye. Right. I was done listening to them tell me how wrong I was.
Yeah.
Right. And
So
I
I
was like,
guess,
that's okay.
so I guess then my question would be, with every, adversity that comes our way, there are things we grow and learn from. So what did this breast implant illness teach you?
Ooh, that's a good question. All right. Well, it taught me, first of all, it taught me how to listen to my body. That was a big, huge piece of it. Is like I had said, I had been ignoring so many really loud signs and symptoms that my body was telling me. So I'm much more in tune with my body. It taught me that I am lovable as I am. I'm very lucky to have such an incredibly supportive partner and husband that helped in that aspect. But also just really being like, I'm good enough. I'm good enough. I don't need these enhancements to be me. It also really showed me that I wanted to be an example for my daughters. I have 2 daughters. I have 1 son. I don't want them to think that they're not good enough as they are. I don't want them to think that they need to change their body shapes or sizes or anything about them. And like I said before, it was so easy for me to advocate and stick up for my kids, but not myself.
Mm.
And so it created this.
But they see they do what they see, not what you say.
Yes, yes, exactly. So it created this kind of fire in my belly to be like, I'm not gonna be that mom that's like, oh, I'm so fat. I'm so fat. I don't want to do that. Or, oh, my boobs don't look good in this. I don't want to do that, because they hear that and then they internalize it and it becomes them. And I would, because I would never tell my children that they looked a certain way, right, or needed to look different, but they would hear what I said about myself and internalize it for them. So it gave me that fire in my belly to be like, I really don't want my children to grow up this way. And it also really made me want to educate other people and let them know, like, we can overturn this, cultural conditioning if we all work together. We really can. We've got to just get in there and do it. We can absolutely do it. And I feel like we have a generation, like you're saying, we have a generation that's really passionate about what's going on in this world. And I think that they are here to change it. And that
They
is
are.
amazing. So I
Yes.
wanted, let's raise a generation of girls that are strong and powerful and love their bodies and come in and just take over the world. Like, I'm all for it.
So I guess I don't know if we can do, if you've got somebody that might be facing similar things, like what are 3 tips, or maybe even somebody who's even questioning breast implants,
Yeah.
but they go, well, maybe I'm still willing to take the risk. So what would be 3 things that I had to look into to see if I'm suitable for breast implants, right? So we can go either way, however you want to go.
Okay. Um,
Because I keep feeling
I,
there's like 2 different demographics. You got those, especially like
you're right.
especially
Yes.
like if you've got breast implant, if you're getting like breast implant reconstruction surgery, it's there.
Yeah.
So they go, yes, but I feel like I still want to do it, but how can I do it in a safe way? Or what should I look for? What should I ask for?
Right.
Or yes, maybe I'm having these symptoms. What are 3 things I should consider looking into, or whatever it might be?
Um, yes. So for those considering implants, and I know there are a couple different demographics in there as well. As of right now, I don't know that there is a absolutely safe implant on the market. Um, you can look into a lot of some of the FDA has been putting out warnings now. There's been a lot of advocacy of the government to have the FDA actually put warning labels on them. So you can definitely do some research there. And in that case too, I would really, really, really dig in as to why. Is it because it's what your doctor is telling you that you need to do? Like, this is just how it's done, right? We just do it this way. This is how it's done. Pick your size. And then see if it's external. Are the voices around you telling you that that's something that needs to be done? And for those of you that potentially have, or that have implants and think maybe you might have breast implant illness, I would look at the communities of women that are going through it currently. And I would go and I would read their stories, and I would go hear what they have to say to see. Like, for me, it was very validating. For me, it checked a lot of boxes for me, because right now there aren't tests that you can do. You can't just go
And you
get a
weren't
blood test.
crazy.
Right. You know,
You
you
weren't
don't get a blood
crazy.
test that says, oh, BII, right? It'll tell you you're not crazy. I mean, you can totally do the thing I did, like get really healthy, like lose a bunch of weight, exercise, like get really clean and detox. And like, I mean, that just takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, but you can do it. And then when you've literally gotten to the point where all your tests are clean, your environment's clean, you're detoxed as much as you can, and you're still sick, you know, but I don't want you to have to learn the hard way like I did, right? It was really hard for me to have to go through that whole gamut before I realized. So, you know, I would say really like pay attention to those body signs, and see if it feels true for you. See if it does ring as truth that these could potentially be making you sick. And if you don't believe that yet, that's perfectly okay. You know, we all have our journeys. But definitely look into what different toxins, what different ingredients that are in implants, what they can do to the body. And I think that might help you understand what they are doing to your body as you have them in you.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, whether you're considering breast implants because, again, whether personal reasons or your doctor's kind of suggesting it because you're having reconstruction surgery, or if you're having symptoms and you're questioning, the one thing that I know works, but this also takes time to cultivate and develop, and that is really building a relationship with the voice of your body. The body
Mm-hmm.
communicates through frequency and vibration and very subtle energies. And we have been a culture that has taught us to disconnect, especially women, from our bodies. And when we can reconnect to our bodies will tell us everything we need to know. We just have to learn the language. We have to quiet the mind, and we have to cultivate that relationship again. And then when you do, you're going to start getting the answers. I promise you, you will.
Absolutely.
So
I
how,
agree. 100%. That was beautiful.
so what's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you?
Right now, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Ellie Vixie. Just my name. It's easy. I'm there. Everything's public, so you can reach me there if you have questions. You can email me also, ellievixie@gmail. That's a great way to get in touch with me. And then I believe you have links to my
Yes, so we'll
stuff as
post
well.
links.
Okay.
Links will be posted in the description, as well as additional
Okay.
resources, including some of the groups and communities that Ellie had mentioned. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening. For those listening, again, please join our Patreon, or please make a donation to help support our social justice initiatives and our partnerships and collaboration. And for now, we are off. Thank you Ellie. Thank you very much. They're very, very Ellie. Thank you, Ellie, for coming in
Thank
and
you.
sharing something that we don't really know a lot about, and yet it's important to get that out there. So I appreciate you, and thank you so much for joining. Till next time
Thank you.
on Triggers and Spiritual Medicine.